Okay, today is July 18th, 2024. This is John Plute, remotely interviewing Pat Murphy. Thanks, Pat, for joining us. We're going to be talking about chatbot and AI, so maybe we should just start going. In a few sentences, and for a general audience, could you just give us your name and tell us what you do and your expertise, and maybe talk a little bit about your awards too?
Okay. I'm Pat Murphy. My expertise is in science writing and science fiction writing. And in science fiction, I write short stories and novels. I've won a number of awards in the field, the Nebula Award twice, the World Fantasy Award, the Theodore Sturgeon Award, a variety of things. And one bit of expertise as a science writer that's particularly pertinent to what we're talking about today. I spent 20 years as the head science writer at the Exploratorium, which is a museum of science, art, and human perception. And human perception has a lot to do with how we view AIs. So I'm hoping we'll have time to get into that. There's a lot of overlap in lessons learned from optical illusions and what is happening today with people's perceptions of AIs.
Interesting. Okay. Let's just jump into it. How did you first become aware of AI and chatbots, the whole field of artificial intelligence?
My first experience with chatbots was with a group of friends. We were in a meeting, and someone had tried it recently, and we all hung around together, giving it different prompts and getting the results. Playing with AI reminded me of the old game of Mad Libs, where the leader of the game has a story with blanks in it. They ask people who are playing for words to fill in the blanks. And you get a story that's usually quite silly and very funny. And it's a great entertainment. Um, and after that experience with AI, I did a little more research and realized that there are common roots between Mad Libs, of all things, a game invented in what, the 30s, maybe the 40s, and current AI. They both the natural language processing systems that underlie AI uh, use what are called phrasal templates. Basically, there's groups of words in any language that are commonly found together. They're more commonly found together than chance would predict. That really assists the recognizing those groups of words. That's what makes Mad Libs work and makes AI work as well as it can because of the way language works. So that was my first experience of AI.
Does the importance of language in writing different from that of other earlier computing technologies, sort of building on the computing part of that?
When I hit this question, I was really kind of startled because I don't think AI has any importance in at least the kind of writing that I do. It is, I suppose it depends on the kind of writing you do, but I have not found chatbots in any way useful or important. When I'm writing to, let me start again on that. One of the reasons I don't find chatbots at all important is the things that they're good at are not things that I value in writing. Chatbots are very good at producing great volumes of extremely derivative work. They're not actually very good at accuracy. They're not necessarily very good at finding the right words. They just find the most commonly used words. Now, I'll give you a specific example. When I'm writing about science, I'm trying to find an explanation for a concept that's often been explained badly many times. I don't need a rehash of those explanations that I have rejected. I need to take a new perspective on it. And what Chatbot provides is I'm going to find group of words, the common way to explain this, and give it to you. And that is not what I need. I will take a minute here. Let me read you an example because I think it's always useful to have an example when you're talking about something. And so I asked the chatbot what causes a rainbow, and I got a mashup of old explanations. What I got was a rainbow is created when sunlight is refracted or bent as it passes through droplets of water in the air. Yeah, that is true. That is an explanation of a rainbow. What does refracted mean? Why is this written in the passive voice? Why haven't you used words that people commonly use and understand? So for me, that wasn't helpful. Um, I could get that sentence from any physicist I talked to, and I talked to a lot of them. So in science writing, it wasn't useful. Chatbot was also, you know, good at mimicking style. But often what it does is it does not distinguish between the good elements of a style and the bad elements of a style. It identifies a style and then this is what I have noticed. I feel it overuses whatever tick that particular writer has. So I asked Chatbot to give me something in the style of one of my books, The City Not Long After. I often use a sentence and have a clause after the sentence. Every sentence in the paragraph it gave me had a sentence with a clause after the other sentence, even when it made it really clunky. So I haven't found it to be of importance in my writing. I also did a little bit of experimenting because some people have told me chatbot's been very helpful in researching. And I know Google, of course, gives you an AI summary of the findings that it's turned up. So I did an experiment. I took something that I know a fair amount about. I just finished working on a novel that is set in early 1900s. Um, and there, in the course of researching the novel, I came across women's fencing. Specifically, I came across a group of performers who appeared in London at the time I was writing about, called Professor Hartle's Viennese Fencing Ladies. And they performed all over Europe. They performed in America, and there was a strange explosion of girls' fencing schools. There were really interesting women who performed fencing exhibitions. One of my favorites was billed herself as La Jaguarina, and she, would challenge various men to a duel, and it was very, very rich, interesting rabbit hole to go down. So I asked Chatbot about women's fencing in at that time in England and America, and they I asked the question in several different ways because often you'll get different responses for different questions, and every single time the explanation or the chatbot response started with a variation on the sentence. Women fencers face significant challenge in a male dominated sport. And none of them mentioned any of the interesting things I had turned up. In fact, when I searched for La Jaguarina, Chatbot gave me a 4 paragraph answer, which described a Mexican dance in which that is popular in Veracruz, in which the performers wear jaguar masks. And it went on and on about this. There is no such dance that I can find.
Okay.
So not only was it not useful, it told me a bunch of stuff that I could not use because it was wrong. And I write fiction, but I like to at least have a basis in fact.
Yeah, it's called hallucination, right? That's
Well,
a great
that
word.
that is a I think it's really it's interesting that the creators of AI have come up with the word hallucination. I would call it a mistake. Falsehood, a lie. Hallucination sort of doesn't sum it up for me. And hallucination also, okay, let's get into the illusion that is part of AI. Hallucination furthers like the fact that you would use the word hallucination fits right in with the way people talk about what AI thinks, what AI knows. AI doesn't think or know anything. AI is, I'm sure I will offend many people involved in it by saying this. It's a glorified autocorrect. It looks for patterns in words and tries to predict the next word. I don't know about you, but autocorrect rarely predicts my next word correctly. In fact, what happens most of the time, autocorrect, I have to spend more time fixing the things that autocorrect, the hallucinations autocorrect has introduced than it would have taken me to type the thing in the first place. So that and that language that you saying that AI thinks, AI knows, it actually has a long history, and this is where optical illusions come in. Um, People tend to see what they expect to see, and they tend to see patterns in words.
Actually, it just brings up an interesting question. So, chatbots are using AIs using patterns to predict what could is plausibly the next word,
Mhm.
and we as humans are always looking for patterns.
Yeah,
That's an
yeah.
interesting mashup. Can you maybe explore that intersection?
When people are looking for patterns, what I find interesting about it is in the realm of creativity, you're looking for patterns that no one has seen before. You're looking to create new patterns. When I'm writing a novel, I'm not trying to write the same novel someone else wrote. I don't tend to write more formulaic work where it's like boy meets girl, they get separated, they fall in. You can look at Hallmark movies and see a pattern. I'm not particularly interested in that. So people are often looking for and finding unique patterns. Creative people are doing that. And people, when AI is looking for patterns, they're looking for the patterns that have existed before. They're looking for that clump of words that has existed before. They're not looking for a brand new clump of words. But when I'm talking about people looking at AI and seeing something that's not there, people are looking at AI and seeing something that is smart, something that is sentient, something that can be creative. That goes way back to the 1960s when a fellow at MIT built a program called ELIZA. And you may be showing ELIZA or having ELIZA on in your exhibit. One of the things that the scientists who built it noticed about ELIZA is people would talk about ELIZA as it really seemed to understand, or I was really got a lot out of it. It was really appreciating my dilemma. It was they assigned human attributes of understanding, of knowing, of sympathizing to a program that was merely echoing their words and following a certain pattern. That I think, and that was called the ELIZA effect. And it's really very robust in what's going on with AI today. Um, and it fits in my mind with the notion that people like to see other people. You've heard of the man in the moon. Well, that's because people look at the random pattern dark spaces on the moon and see a face. They like to see faces. You look at the grill of a car, and you see two eyes for the headlights, and the grill is a mouth. You immediately put it into human form. And essentially, that can happen on a much higher level with AI. Um, People see it as generating thoughtful text because they kind of want to see that.
Interesting. Although I know as a trained industrial designers are trying to make faces on cars. So that's
Really?
just interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
it's all over the place. I mean, I've working at the Exploratorium. We did an article on it, and you look at a house with two windows and a garage door. It's like there's a face. You look at an outlet. There's a face. You look at a pair of pliers that's open, and you see open mouth. There's the eye. You take that and you take that model of the face and impose it on the world. And you take that model when it comes to language and reading something, you take the model of human understanding and impose it on what you're reading. And you see the AI, or you say the AI knows something or um, thought of something.
interesting. Um, how these are kind of the couple bigger questions.
Mhm.
What perspectives does your background as a science fiction writer give you about these technologies? What are you seeing? I mean, we've been talking about that, but
Yeah.
specifically related to science fiction writing.
Well, as a science fiction writer, I get really tired of people talking about the sentience of AI. And I'm aware that we science fiction writers are part of the problem here. I mean, for more than 100 years, there have been science fiction stories with sentient robots and sentient computers in them. They're all over the place. In fact, there's a joke sometimes in science fiction circles that if you can't make a story sell as science fiction, put a robot in it, you know. Or if it's fantasy, put a dinosaur in it, because that's a marker of science fiction. But my problem, and in science fiction, let me back up. In science fiction, often robots are used to do the dirty work. They're used to do the work people don't want to do because it's dangerous or it's tedious, and uh, programs, computing can help you a great deal with tedious data crunching and things like that, and spell checking, except when it gets it wrong. Um, but what I think is going on here that's very strange is the people who are designing AI seem to think because it can take a bunch of words and smash them into shape, that it can substitute for creativity. Now, I know the people who are creating AI are creative. They're thinking very hard about how to make this program work, but they aren't thinking about it the way the creative people, like the screenwriters, the writers, the artists, do. Part of the creativity is breaking patterns. And that's part of the joy of it. When you've been trying to get something to work and you suddenly realize, "Oh, there's a different perspective I can take that changes it entirely. I can break this pattern." And that's what AI is not good at because it's designed to replicate patterns. So that's, I think, the thing that I find very strange about AI, that rather than figuring out how it can do the work that people don't want to do, how can it do the something that people are really good at and play with and enjoy? How can you just make a robot do that? I'm going to check my notes to see if I've left anything useful out here. I'm sure I have, but
There are more questions here, but
oh, there's lots of questions. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so I talked about why AI is not useful to me. Uh, my experiments with I was so disappointed when it didn't find La Jaguarina, even when I gave it the name and it had to make up something. And then when I put it in again and said, a fencer named La Jaguarina, it said, I can't find anything about that.
just out of curiosity, so you found that on the internet
Yeah, oh, it's
somewhere?
in Wikipedia.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
La Jaguarina into Wikipedia, and it would come up with the name of the woman fencer and the background on her.
Wow,
I thought, well, if I do this, that just gives it away. But I did that, and it didn't come up with the answer. It didn't come up with anything about that.
really interesting. Did,
I mean, it's strange.
what any theories about why?
I don't. I'd love to hear an AI expert explain why. Um, does it only search? I mean, Wikipedia. That would be that's there to be scraped. Take it. It's So I have no idea. And I tried to phrase the question about women fencers of the early 1900s in a variety of different ways. And the first sentence was always, as I said, something about women fencers had a challenge because it was a male dominated sport. That wasn't what I asked. I wanted to know who were the lady fencers, what was going on there. Nothing. I found so much. I mean, I have pages that I've found about women fencers, not just La Jaguarina, but it found none of it.
Interesting. Which kind of is leading into my next question. When we talked earlier, you were very concerned about copyright issues and plagiarism
Oh,
and yeah, all this stuff. And so, with that context in mind, and La Jaguarina too, what are your concerns about these technologies?
I think my biggest concern is perhaps, I mean, there's a number of different concerns. One of them is the use of AI for things basically makes people used to bad writing. I mean, I was shocked by how much passive voice there was, by how much verbiage there was. I tried AI on some simple tasks because I figured, um, okay, getting it to mimic the style of an author, okay, that's a more advanced task. Um, if this is supposed to write something decent, let me give it a formulaic kind of thing to write and I'll ask it to do that. So I asked it to write up realtor's description, the description a realtor would write for a small house that needed fixing up. And it came up with a paragraph that did use some of the language that a realtor would use, like charming. That's code for small, and in need of TLC. But it also went on. It was like it took about twice the space to say what it needed to say. It repeated itself. It didn't basically in order if I were a realtor and I did that and I needed to use that, I would have to be a good editor. And I'd cut out and it would take just as long for me anyway to edit it into a semi-useful form as it would have done to write it in the first place. So what one thing I fear is AI will get people used to bad writing. Another is it will drive down the ways that writers can make a living and reduce the income to writers. Third is it will produce terrible work that purports to be in the style of a particular writer. I don't know if you've heard about the fan who decided that he would work with AI and write the last book in the Game of Thrones series. And it has copyright infringement was uh, George R. R. Martin and various people went after him and he took it down. But no one wants someone else to mess with their work in that way. I think one of the biggest dangers is a great big pile of bad work dumped on top of all the writing that's available in the world. I think I talked to you about the problems that a number of science fiction magazines had in 2023, where they were suddenly swamped with AI generated stories that were terrible. But they came, so many of them came in. I'll read to you from the editorial by the publisher of Clark's World. And he said, it's for the first time in over a decade, we've closed story submissions for something other than a server or software update. What happened? We were receiving a large number of submissions generated by Chat GPT. We received 50 of them the morning we closed, and over 500 in under 20 days that month. That was almost as many as the number of human submissions they had received. And although they could tell it was an AI generated submission, they still had to take the time to look at it. And it overburdened them to the point where they had to shut down submissions. Um, and it's a small magazine. Science fiction magazines tend to be small. They all now have policies that say, don't send us AI generated stuff. If you do, we'll never read your stuff. Um, And it turns out that these submissions were coming from people who had subscribed to classes or looked at websites that said, you can make a living writing science fiction. You can write a science fiction novel in a week with AI. And well, you can, but no one will want to read it. So that kind of burden, it's a burden on the writers to be dealing with all the bad writing out there, but it's a burden on the editors, it's a burden on the system.
And you were very concerned about copyright, and I mean, this
Well,
all kind of relates to each other.
when it comes to copyright, the people who created the databases that AI draw on to learn language did not get permission from the authors. They did not limit themselves to public domain material. They basically took people's material, downloaded it into a database, and then used that database to train AI. So what they're doing is they're taking words without paying for them, without getting permission. And as someone who has books in print, authors earn money from their existing work that is not in the public domain by taking that work and then, say, generating a copy, the next story in a series, uh, for example. You are infringing on that author's right to their own material, and you're infringing on their livelihood.
Is there any more you want to add to that group of things we've been talking about?
Now let me check. Let me look at my notes because this is interesting. It's just a note at the bottom of my notes. Um, I had not played a lot with Chat GPT before you asked me to do this interview, but I did spend some time playing with it. And one of the things that I always look at is the privacy policy and the terms of service. I was really interested in the terms of service to find this paragraph. In the event that you post or submit any ideas, creative suggestions, designs, photographs, information, advertisements, data, or proposals, including ideas for new or improved products, services, features, technologies, or promotions, you expressly agree that such submissions will automatically be treated as non confidential and non propriety and will become the sole property of the chatbot app without any compensation or credit to you whatsoever. So, yeah, okay then. So they see the value of intellectual property, just the property belongs to us. I mean, I looked at that and went, yeah, there's a reason I haven't used this. Uh, let's Oh, and Chatbot and bot app and its affiliates shall have no obligations with respect to such submissions or posts and may use the ideas contained in such submission or post for any purposes in any medium in perpetuity, including but not limited to developing, manufacturing, and marketing products and services using such ideas.
I think we talked about this before too. So they see the value of proprietary, the stuff you've created, but they
Hmm.
also say we're not responsible for, putting it out there, regrinding it, and using it again. Do you talk about that?
When I've talked to friends about this, I refer to it as they take your book, grind it up into hamburger, say the hamburger is theirs and they can use it however they want, and then proceed to do that. But I don't know. I mean, that, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't personally know anyone who is involved in this work. And I think it would be fascinating to talk to them about what do you see yourself doing here? Um, how How do you see it okay? Would you be bothered if someone took your program and used its bones to make their own program? Would you be, I mean, where do they see the line? Because the way it appears from my point of view is they think if it's in the world, it can belong to them. If a work, a set of words, it's all free. And it is interesting to think about this. Over the history of the internet, ideas want to be free. But at the same time, if you make your living refining ideas and creating something with them, then there are issues. I mean, it's tricky. It's tricky ground because there are also there's copyright and there's a limit to copyright because public domain. Sherlock Holmes has finally entered the public domain entirely, and that's cause for celebration among many writers who like to play with the ideas in Sherlock Holmes. But the Conan Doyle estate had exclusive right to it for a long time. There's a balance. There's a balance there. I feel like the way they have used existing works in AI is not nuanced. It's just like, no, we have the right to make use of all of this that we want.
Okay, so here's a couple. I have two more summary questions. First one is, what, if anything, excites you about the use of large language models and chatbots based upon them for creative pursuits, especially involving writing and maybe digital humanities in general, or not? That's up
Yeah.
to you.
Oh, is that the question? How are you seeing today's chatbots and LLMs affecting writing? Not to mention life on Earth, which I thought was a
Yeah,
good
that was a
question.
good. Those are two of the same questions, but yeah, life on Earth for sure.
Well, in terms of writing, I don't think chatbots are going to be very useful to me. Um, at least not in their current form. I did experiment with it, and the experiments did not lead me to think there was anything of value here for me. But that could change in a decade. Who knows? Um, I am very aware of the threat that they pose for writers and artists. And it's not the threat of being replaced, it's the danger of reduced ability to make a living in an already underpaid profession. It's the danger of having your past work stolen and corrupted and presented in a form that you don't agree with. And it's the problem of having really good work buried in so much dreck, so many imitations, so much bad writing that you can't find the good stuff. Um, those are the dangers I see. and I really don't see much value in it to me at this point.
Okay. My last question.
On the other hand, when I first looked at Pandora at the Exploratorium, or what was it at that point? It was Mosaic at the Exploratorium, our first introduction to the internet. It was like, what the hell is this thing? What good is this? So I will not make any claim to being a futurist looking at something and going, I know what will happen.
What do you think it is most important for people to know about the relation of today's chatbots and LLMs to writing and creativity? I know we've covered that, but maybe there's a little more statement you have about that.
Um, I would not use chatbot and creativity in the same sentence. Um, I, that's based on how I've looked at them. Um, and I would caution people to remember the Eliza effect. I worry about how people seem to think AI knows things or AI thinks things. I look at people like the lawyer who used AI to write a brief and it made up cases and he didn't check. Clearly, he was of the opinion that AI was like a person, checking things, thinking about facts. So, those are the things I would worry about.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
One of the things I thought was super interesting was when I was talking about the Clark's World, when people were trying to write science fiction stories and sell them, they were being encouraged to do that by people who were selling courses on how to use Chat GPT to make money. And one of the things that science fiction sometimes can predict is something like that. One of the things that cyberpunks really got right was there's no technology that can't be used to profit for criminals. So any technology is look at how it can be used in a crime.